Hi, I'm Lisa Fletcher, and you're in the stream. Today, seconds, minutes, and hours are being watched closely by people across the globe expecting the world to end on December 21st. We look at why some insist on believing in doomsday prophecies. Our digital producer, Malika Bilal, watching all your live feedback as it comes into our studio. She's going to get as much of it on the air as possible. Malika, some of these doomsday scenarios, they're funny. It's hard to believe people believe in this stuff. But then there are others, some of whom we're going to have on the show today, who it's kind of hard to argue with their logic.
Right. And all of these theories get people thinking. So we asked our community to complete the phrase, "My last day on Earth," to see what it would look like.
Yeah.
We got this tweet on the funny side from Koyayo, who says, "Can you please send me your bank card and password because I will go nowhere into the world for you, not me." But we also got serious responses like this one from Aisha, who says, "On my last day on Earth, I will pray till dawn, forgive and ask for forgiveness, and post my last tweet, I was here." For those of you at home, we'd like you to join the conversation. Tweet us with the hashtag AJStream.
So wait, I want to know how you completed it.
I didn't yet. We'll see at the end of the show if I'm convinced either way.
Mine would involve lots of pizza. Joining us on the set is Asa Winsubsang, interactive writing fellow with Mother Jones. His recent article, Mayan Apocalypse, Everything You Needed to Know But Were Really Afraid to Ask, manages to sum up all the doomsday scenarios out there. So Swin, welcome to the stream.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you. Remember, you can stay in touch with the stream on Google+. Join more than 400,000 people who've added us to their circles. Now, we received a lot of video comments from our community discussing their thoughts on the end of the world. Here are a few of them.
The biggest threat we face is a global food pandemic, and that requires preparation due to social disruption.
Doomsday isn't real. It was merely just a money-making scheme.
And there's also something very deep in our DNA about wanting to know what the world is like when we're gone or what happens at the end.
We're going to wake up in the morning and live our lives. We'll forget about this nonsense.
As a Muslim, I believe that these are only myths and nothing else but to create panic amongst people. The world is not going to end.
On my last day on Earth, I would listen to Beethoven, the Beatles, Miles Davis. I would watch Charlie Chaplin.
As December 21st nears, people from Russia to Turkey to the U.S. are preparing for an apocalypse. Whether it's the Mayan calendar ending or planet Nibiru colliding with the Earth or the world's magnetic poles flip-flopping, people insist on believing that the end of the world is near. Now, as you can see from this fake weather forecast being shared online, some people aren't so optimistic. Monday through Thursday, looks pretty good. Friday, we might want to stay indoors. Now, although these scenarios seem pretty far-fetched for many, there are those who lie somewhere in the middle. Preppers, as they are known, are a category of survivalists who are preparing for a catastrophe that will end the world as we know it. This could mean anything from stockpiling weapons to just making sure that you have plenty of canned goods on hand. With a reported 3 million in the U.S., National Geographic's Doomsday Preppers has become the channel's #1 show. Take a look.
I'm preparing my family
for a massive earthquake, terrorist attack,
dirty bomb blast, global pandemic. Hold on tight. Woo, yeah.
The new season of Doomsday Preppers.
I know something's going to go wrong.
Am I nuts or are you?
Kicks off with back-to-back episodes, Tuesday at 9 on National Geographic.
So, has survivalism gone mainstream, and why do people really believe in these prophecies? Joining us via Skype from Montreal, Canada is Dr. Lorenzo Di Tommaso, professor and chair of the Department of Religion at Concordia University. He also specializes in the study of global apocalypticism, and he's written numerous articles on the subject. He's currently working on his next book, The Architecture of Apocalypticism. Also with us via Skype from Phoenix is Lisa Bedford. She is a prepper and author of The Survival Mom. In her book, you will find hundreds of tips and strategies to steer your family through uncharted territory. Both of you, welcome to the stream.
Hi, Lisa.
Thank you.
So, Lorenzo, I want to start with you. You know, in the context of the world ending tomorrow, who are these people? And are they simply paranoid, or are they just being prepared?
Well, the people are us. it's not just people who are believing that a planetary body will suddenly appear in the solar system. The Mayan apocalypse has provided a line, an apocalyptic line, onto which people have righted a whole set of apocalyptic expectations. Everything from old school biblical catastrophism to this new planet to the dawn of the age of Aquarius. So if we want to know who is being informed by the 2012 apocalypse, all we have to do is look into the mirror.
And, you know, we look into the mirror and we see people like ourselves. I look at Lisa Bedford, and Lisa, you're a soccer mom, and you are not somebody who's living on the fringe, off the grid, weaving sweaters out of dog hair. You're your average mom, right? How did you get into
That's
this?
Right. If someone had told me that I would be labeled a survivalist or something like that just a few years ago, I would have been incredulous. Because when I first got into this, I just wanted to be proactive, and I just wanted to be smart.
Was there something that clicked in you that said, ooh, I need to take these steps that I haven't taken as of yet? Was there a moment?
You know, for me, I really like to live in the real world. So when I look around, I'd rather look at life in the world and put away the rose-colored glasses. So when I started noticing that things were happening with the economy and to families around me that I knew, solid families who had followed all the rules, as we might say, and they were losing homes, they were in danger of foreclosure, they were losing jobs and really solid careers, I decided to take on the perspective of that could happen to us. And rather than sit and be a victim and wait for the other shoe to drop, as they say, I went out to find out what I could do. What can I do now to make my family a little safer, a little more secure in the future? And before long, I found myself in the realm of preppers, but I had never heard of the word before. I just thought that I was being smart.
Well, our community members are chiming in because they're letting us know that the world has not ended where they are. This was this graphic on my screen was the top trending item on Reddit for a while. The world has not ended. Sincerely, New Zealand. Another tweet from Sanju who says, it's already December 21st in Australia and life is as normal as it's always been. And one more, Victor says, it's December 21st in Mumbai, India, and no Mayan apocalypse. Doomsday must be in the South American time zone then. Swin, I want to go to you because a lot of this is based on a misinterpretation of the Mayan calendar,
Yes.
long-form calendar, correct?
Yes.
Explain to us how that works. You wrote an article about it.
Well, the Maya peoples, they're still around. It's a lot of them reside in Guatemala, and they're descendants of the ancient civilization. And a lot of them are understandably pissed that American pop culture and the entertainment industry and others have kind of taken these twistings of the Mayan calendar. Like the Mayan long-term calendar, nowhere in it does it actually say December 21st, 2012, the whole world is going to experience a cataclysmic death. Nowhere does it actually say that. At some point, somebody misinterpreted, and it's been spun into all kinds of different cultures and pop cultures and folklore. So it's sort of like this great history and great culture of the Maya peoples has been reduced to a bad Roland Emmerich movie starring John Cusack that came out a few years ago. So, you can understand why some people would be a little bit ticked.
And the ticked, there's just a couple of tweets here from Mark Gonzalez on that same note, who says, for everyone who today is muttering the words apocalypse and Mayan in the same sentence, please stop. For every person who has made a Hollywood spectacle out of indigenous science and social shifts, please apologize. And he follows it up with saying, if the end of our species occurs anytime this year or in the coming century, it will not be due to indigenous beliefs, but human arrogance. Lisa?
Well, I've gotten some funny tweets throughout the day, so I have to read some of them because we got one from Terry Simpson earlier. He said, I am not Christmas shopping till later, just in case. So it's finally the first legitimate reason for guys not to Christmas shop until the very last minute. But, Lorenzo, I want to jump back to you with something that Lisa brought up. She said, there were all these solid families she knew that were falling apart, that had all of these things happening to them that they had no control over, and she thought it was time to take precautions. What role does a series of crises like, Katrina and Hurricane Sandy and terrorism and mass murders, what does that play in terms of how people prep or react? And is it sort of a barometer of our social anxiety?
Yeah, it is, Lisa. It's important for the apocalyptic worldview to have a sense that the problems in the world are so great that they seem insurmountable through human intellection or imagination. But not everything is apocalyptic. Just a few years ago, there was a massive earthquake off the coast of Tokyo, and we can look at that as a tectonic event. We can look at that as a demographic tragedy. We can even look at that as a nuclear calamity. But it's only if you understand that as an apocalyptic event do you come to the conclusion that something has to be done. Now, the funny thing is that most of the time, apocalypticism assumes that God is in control of history and we have to do nothing. What we've encountered, especially with this 2012 Mayan phenomenon, is the sense that maybe we can do something and can get involved like the preppers do. I'm not saying I subscribe to that theory, but it's certainly understandable from their point of view.
Lisa, why do you think people are increasingly fearful these days?
You know, I don't think that is the fear is based on imaginary boogeymen. I mean, Hurricane Sandy actually hit Long Island, you know, an area that we would never associate typically with a major hurricane. And in those instances, we have seen how there is virtually no help or very limited help when it comes to even the best intentioned government agencies and private agencies. And so there's an acronym in the prepper community called YOYO, and that stands for You're On Your Own. And so we just kind of look at how can we prepare our families for, depending on where you live, you know, a hurricane or tornado, major earthquake, and prepare as though you really are on your own. And certainly those concerns are not unfounded.
Indeed not, and I'm sure self-reliance plays a big role in all of this. Lorenzo, what role does this idea of mistrust in authority play, though? I mean, we look back at what's happened in the United States over the last few years and how the greed of the powerful devastated so many American families. People have really lost their trust in the system. Does that play a role in these increasing numbers of not just doomsdayers, but, you know, preppers and people who are really trying to prepare in ways that we haven't seen Americans prepare for decades and decades?
Oh, very much so. I think actually for the last 40 or 50 years, the same could be said. I think there's a growing sense, not just in America, but around the world, that the economy is collapsing, the environment is certainly shot, and the political system doesn't really work. Now, there's many ways to get around that, but one way is to take matters into your own hands. And I think that's what we're seeing right now with the preppers, whether it's preparing for an economic collapse or bearing a bunch of buses in your backyard and preparing for the end of the world. You're really motivated by the same sense, I'm going to do something about what I see is going wrong with the world right now.
Well, Lisa, what you just said about the yo-yo, you're on your own, I think that's resonating with our community members. Alberta wrote on our stream.aljazeera.com page, she says, while the end of the world won't happen tomorrow, it's close. It's our own greed and irresponsibility as stewards of the earth that will bring about our apocalypse. But Lisa, have a listen to this video comment left by a member of our community, and let me know if this resonates with you.
This is James from Survival Punk, and I think that the survival movement is gaining so much mainstream appeal because the unsustainable way that our world's being ran. People know instinctively that we just can't keep spinning this way, and the Mayan apocalypse is just an excuse by people to prepare. Personally, I don't think anything's going to happen on the 21st, so I suggest you enjoy some margaritas with some friends and prepare for yourself and not an apocalypse.
So Lisa, he says prepare for yourself. Are the rest of us being naive by not preparing?
You know, I really believe that people are preparing just based on their own perceptions of what may happen. And so I think that if someone truly believes the apocalypse is going to happen tomorrow when they have a bus buried in their backyard or living in a silo, you know, that is based on their perception of reality. I have always just preferred to go middle of the road and say, well, where I happen to live. So what I suggest to people is, you know, just think about more realistic scenarios. What is the most likely man-made disaster? A personal disaster, the most likely natural disaster, freak weather occurrence. Prepare for those. And maybe someday if there is an apocalypse, you might be a little bit better prepared than a neighbor, you know, perhaps in a place to help them. But it pretty much all starts with, as you mentioned, you know, some self-reliance and just looking and saying, what can I do today?
Well, let me just say for the record, if something did happen, like let's say if tomorrow the movie Red Dawn comes true and the Russians or the North Koreans or whoever invades, she's going to be prepared, and I'm probably going to be a sitting duck. I'm pretty confident she'll take down a lot of Spetsnaz with her, and I'll be pathetic crying in my bathtub or something.
Malika, you got some tweets over there for us?
But I guess I want to pick up on that point because it's that fact that, and also the video comment who says that, it's your own responsibility, prepare for yourself. What will you do after this to make sure that you're prepared for whatever comes? If it's not the end of the world, if it is, a tsunami, if it is an earthquake, if it is...
Well, the only thing I'm stockpiling right now is like Natty Light. So I think I have to do some work on my prep work.
Well, stockpiling, I know, is a word that a lot of people take issue with because it makes you sound kind of like a hoarder. I'd like to go to Lorenzo. I'd like if you could maybe talk to us about some of the psychology behind that and whether or not there's a difference between hoarding, of course, and the negative connotation behind stockpiling and people that are literally just preparing for the worst.
Well, you have to remember this, that, we're talking about people hoarding and preparing for a post-apocalyptic world. But actually, when you look at the history of apocalyptic speculation, which has been going on for about 22 centuries, more often than not, it doesn't seem that there is a post-apocalyptic future. That is to say, the end of the world is literally the end of the world. It's only been the last 40 or 50 years we've had this notion. It really came about with the atomic bomb, if you think about it.
Yeah.
That there's a post-apocalyptic scenario, and we have to either hoard or stockpile. The problem with talking about hoarding or stockpiling, and especially in a nation that has a lot of guns, is the first thing I think of as a Canadian is, Waco, Texas, and Branch Davidians. So when you talk about apocalyptic scenarios and hoarding things, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
But founder of the American Preppers Network, a guy named Tom Martin, he says 5,000 people a day visit his website. Those are big numbers. How do you explain that kind of interest, Lorenzo?
Well, it's because, as I said, I think that people have this innate, one of your guests, I think it was Swin who said this, we have this innate sense that there's something wrong with the world today. We can't always express it, but one way of expressing it very easily is to look forward to a better future, to identify something that seems to be wrong and look forward to a better future and actually plan for it. And so I think the preppers have tapped into that. They recognize that there's something wrong. They've recognized that these problems are so large that they can't be easily overcome, and they've decided to take things in their own hands, whether it's hoarding or stockpiling. What I would say is this, we don't have to look for an apocalypse in some archaic calendar or some ancient book in order to give us revelation about a divine future. I think all you have to do is look outside your kitchen window and see the catastrophic degradation of the environment and maybe make some efforts in that direction.
So, Lisa, we throw around a lot of terms, doomsdayers and preppers and survivalists, and I know you said you found yourself being a prepper, but within these circles, are there different connotations with each of those labels? Like, do you look at some of them and think, wow, those are the really extreme ones?
It's interesting because there's quite a continuum, beginning with, on one end, people who just want to be ready for a blizzard this winter. Or if they live in tornado country, they just want to be ready for the next tornado. And then at the far end, you do have the people who are literally waiting for the world to end tomorrow and everything in between. And in the prepper community, I would say by and large, we're very much mainstream. We're very much suburban families for the most part. We have to plan dinner tonight. We have to plan birthday parties. We're wrapping Christmas presents. And we continue to live our life, but it's like there's a second train track. And on one track, our lives have not changed. And on a second train track, when I go to the grocery store, if I see tuna in the can on sale, or if I notice that there's a really good sale on some vegetables and I can can or dehydrate, I'll pick them up. So it's almost like living two lives, parallel to each other, but they complement each other as well.
Mm-hmm. You're keeping that what-if scenario sort of very much in the present part of your mind.
Back here somewhere, right.
Yeah. The question that's been raised today is whether some people who believe in these prophecies do so, simply because they don't understand science. And a popular American astrophysicist, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he posted a tweet and it got a lot of reaction. He wrote, "End of the world prophecies for 2012 are hoaxes perpetrated by the scientifically illiterate on the scientifically underinformed." And sharing his sentiments is Kelly Leppo, an astronomer at the University of Toronto who conducts doomsday debunking talks. We spoke to her earlier about this whole issue. Take a listen.
I think it's partially a lack of science education, right? People really respect science, I guess, and scientists, but science education tends to be very poor, and so people are sort of intimidated, I guess, by science. So a lot of these things are sort of crouched in pseudoscientific language, so they sound plausible to someone who really doesn't understand how the universe really works.
But Lorenzo, based on what you were saying, all you got to do is look outside your window to see that something's not right. Does it really require a scientific education to, at the very least, be prepared?
There's two sides to this question. The first is apocalypticism, and a lot of these, it asks questions about humans and human existence. Who am I? What's my place in the universe? What group do I belong to? What's our group's place in the universe? And these aren't questions that science is really built to answer. So that's one side of the answer. The other side, though, is that usually claims for these apocalyptic predictions are ridered on to either astronomical predictions or calculations about time, which do fall within the purview of science. And there, your guest from the University of Toronto is absolutely right. All you have to do is start asking yourself the question, does this fit with what I know about the world today? And if not, why am I special? Well, how do I have this special information about this other track, as your prepper said, about this other track that tells me something that not everyone can see? And it's this other track, that's what really intrigues me, because from Prophecies 22:20, from 2,000 years ago, the revelation of John, so on and so forth, you have this idea that there is another track, a special way of looking at things, a hidden sort of knowledge or revelation that tells you something, maybe about the signs of the end. There's a medieval text I study when I go to Europe and look through the libraries there at the apocalyptic scriptures. And there's a medieval text called the 15 Signs of Doomsday. And that's 700, 800 years old, but that's exactly what's going on right here, that there's another track, another way of looking at things, and according to them, you better be attuned to that, because that's the real reality. That's what's really going to happen.
There's a tweet here that's also kind of casting doubt on whether or not you have to have a really, education in science. To believe this, Tab says, mass viral epidemic, pandemics, food, water, fuel shortage, global violent warfare, all of these are historically and factually possible. Lisa, I wonder if you can give our audience a sense of how you have prepared your family for the worst, whatever it may be.
A lot of times the misconception is out there that you have to stockpile stuff. Whether it's food or whether it's medical supplies, that is a part of it, because we all have seen following just about even fairly minor emergencies that Home Depot is stripped bare of different kinds of supplies, as well as grocery stores. So that is a part of it. But I think what has benefited my family the most is really what we have been learning in the way of just knowledge and skills. So we have taken first aid classes and CPR classes as a family. My husband and I recently got our amateur radio licenses. We really think that in a crisis, whether it is a major storm in the Phoenix area, or flooding or whatever, communication, getting information out and getting information in so you know what's going on, that's vital. And we wanted to take steps to be able to, to be able to do that for ourselves and our family and neighborhood. I've learned to can. My kids have learned to can and dehydrate food. We've learned how to make food from scratch. When I first started, I had no idea that when I put wheat into a wheat grinder, flour would come out the other side. So, I was starting at ground zero, literally, because I was a suburban child. I grew up just a very nice, comfortable life. And yet a part of this is like going back to the skills and knowledge that our grandparents and great-grandparents had. And my kids are better prepared. And so they know a little bit about self-defense. They know horseback riding. They've learned archery. They have learned so much.
Lisa, I don't think anybody is going to not see the logic in what you're doing. Lorenzo, we've got about a minute left in the program. Why don't you wrap things up for us?
Sure. I think apocalyptic speculation's been with us for 22 centuries. The real question is why. Not every civilization looks to apocalypticism as a way of understanding our place in the world in it. In fact, if you look at the great Eastern civilizations, they just don't have it. I just returned from Japan. One of the reasons I was there was to study the introduction of apocalypticism about 50 or 60 years ago. So if it is true, looking back over the last 40 or 50 years and seeing ourselves in this sort of age of apocalypse, which is now global, because Western civilization has become global, the global civilization. I think the question we have to ask is, what is propelling us in this direction? I think it's a combination of the media. I think it's a combination of some problems that we perceive. But I think it's also a combination of ourselves, which is to say the terrain, our own societal terrain, in which the apocalypticism plant has taken root and seems to be flourishing right now. I would also add to this, again, I think the real apocalypse is the apocalypse outside of our kitchen windows, and somebody's got to do something about it, and we can't wait for someone else or something else to do it. If not us, then who? And if not now, then when?
All right, thank you to all of our guests. We want you all to sit tight and join us for our post show, which is coming up next. We're going to continue this conversation at stream.aljazeera.com. Welcome back. We're in the Stream's online post show, and we're discussing the end of the world prophecies and why people insist on believing in them. With us are Asawin Subsang, Dr. Lorenzo Di Tommaso, and Lisa Bedford. Lorenzo, I want to pick up with you. You were just talking about the things that propel us in this direction. Has the media, with its 24-hour coverage and its tendency to focus on all things that are the worst in society, sort of played into the fears of doomsdayers and preppers and survivalists?
Yeah, played in is the right word. It didn't create this. I mean, when we think about 50 or 60 years ago, just trying to think how many apocalyptic movies were there? Very few. It really came about with the understanding that we could destroy ourselves through nuclear weapons. But the media picked that up. Popular media, highbrow media, doesn't make a difference, and has run with it. And so, I mean, we can go now and see a movie, the movie that Swinner was referring to, 2012. We can go now and watch a movie, and you really think about it, we're seeing the end of the world on screen with its view of time and the end of time, and no one bats an eyelash. And I bet you that wasn't the case 100 years ago. With people saying, what are you talking about, end of the world? This is the age of progress. This is the Victorian age. But right now, 110 years later, we can watch this movie and say, hey, this doesn't faze us. We live in this apocalyptic age because it's a reflection of who we are.
And Sven, that's something that you had been tweeting about earlier. There's a tweet here that says, I wonder if someone is calculating the amount of money made off of this end of the world hype. I'm sure it's a lot. And we also got a Facebook comment who's from Kunjani, who says, those who came up with it are economists who wanted people to spend much on unsold stock. They wanted to clear stock before the end of the year such that people enjoying part of their savings. And you were tweeting about Mayan wine and Mayan apocalypse t-shirts, and this is all a big business.
Capitalism at its best. I mean, maybe not big business, but moderately sized business. I mean, people are selling T-shirts and hoodies online. In France, a village, mountain town, where people believe it might be the summit of aliens protecting locals from the apocalypse. They're selling at restaurants apocalypse red wine or apocalypse pizza. I would like to taste some apocalypse pizza, but I don't think I'm going to get to France in time.
You're not afraid that it would mean the end of the world for you?
I don't think it would be. And the good thing about, as a journalist, if I write about this, if it is the end of the world for me, nobody will be on Twitter to call me on my inaccuracies.
Good point.
Hey, Lorenzo, why don't failed doomsday predictions discourage people who believe in these apocalyptic theories?
3 reasons. One is we forget generation to generation. I mean, 1844, people hung around upstate New York to see the second coming of Jesus Christ. When he didn't appear, they all went home, and the regret was so great that they called the event from that point on the Great Disappointment. But really, there's 2 things that happen after a failed prophecy. Either one is people move on, or go crabwise to the next prophecy, or like it happened with Harold Camping's prophecy last year, 2011, the radio pastor Harold Camping. You get the sense that you got the calculations wrong, that Bible can't be an error, for instance. So if the Bible can't be an error and the prophecy didn't happen, well, maybe your calculations were off and back to the drawing board, so to speak.
All right. Well, on that note, we are going to wrap up our post show, but our thanks to Swin Subsang, Dr. Lorenzo Di Tommaso, and Lisa Bedford coming to us from Arizona. Thanks to all of you, and thanks to everyone who participated via Twitter and Facebook today. We'll look forward to seeing you on Monday's program.